Welcome back to Avenger 82. So I don't know if you watched the previous video telling you about everything, but yeah, so we're in Richmond like I mentioned in the previous one. We'll be in here at Richmond for the next two videos, so this one and this one afterwards. First of which is here at Richmond Castle. So well, not much else to say really, it's a castle. Let's go have a look. Right, so Richmond Castle, like I said, is where we are. Built in the 11th century, Richmond Castle was actually built by a man called Alan Rufus, who was the cousin of William the Conqueror. So the first castle in Carnation, which you would have entered through the exact same gates that I'm next to right now, was built in the 11th century. It was consequently abandoned for several centuries before being reused again in the 1850s, which is where this building, the cell block, comes in behind me. So this was built between 1855 and 1857. The castle has seen many uses over the years. It's even been used by the North Yorkshire Militia, which was the North Yorkshire Militia were the first ones to reuse it after their century. It's been used in the First World War. It's been used by the Territorial Army. Last official use was during the First World War. And then consequently again it was abandoned site, and then it was started being used again by the National Site Heritage Site, which is now where you can come and visit today. Right, so this is the remains of the castle. The remains of the castle are literally remains. You can see it's, if I turn the camera around, it's very much a ruin. Very spectacular ruin, but nonetheless a ruin. That said, this building behind me here, which is really quite impressive, as you might have seen in the opening scenes, you can still climb up inside this. We're going to go up there, and whilst we're up there, I'll be able to show you something else which we're going to be doing a video on in the future, but that's not one of the ones I'm doing at the moment. So this should be interesting. He says fighting his bag. Oh dear, rucksacks. Right, so let's now go have a look upstairs, and we'll see what's up there, see what's in these buildings, and also if you want to give some credit to Blaze in the comments for that opening video there where I was giving you the first bits of information, then do so, because that's the first time she's filmed for me and I think she's done a bloody good job. Right, up the stairs. Right, so as you can see we're halfway up climbing the tower. You can see here the village of Richmond. What you can see here in the distance, or hopefully the sun's not ruining it, is one of the original city walls that came out from the castle and went along there. Now the thing I was on about showing you is that building over there in the distance. That's now called the station. It's a cinema, cafe and a few other bits, but it used to be, as you probably already guessed from the name, the old Richmond railway station line, which was closed by Mr. Beeching in the 1960s. However, quite uniquely, which is why we're going to go and do a video on it at some point, it's still got all its platforms in place, so that'll be quite an interesting look. I think they've kept all the original, well, most of the original buildings, so it's pretty much as was, obviously, by the track and the trains, which is quite cool. So we'll have a look at that at some point. Also, as you'll probably imagine already, because we're filming a castle, Erica herself is in her element because she's got an obsession with castles, even ruined ones. So yeah, I mean, look, how happy are you that we're at a castle? No, don't do camera versus camera. That's ridiculous. This is clearly the better camera.
Very. And it's sunny.
Hello.
At the end of October.
Yeah.
My dog is cute.
See, everybody's here, unfortunately.
Hey, how rude! And that's just mean. And the squirrel.
Don't worry,
Oh,
Charlie.
God.
I appreciate you.
Right, so what we're going to be doing next is we're going through here, and unfortunately for me, and I say unfortunately not lightly, unfortunately for me, up all those bloody stairs. So wish me luck. Right, so according to this, the room we're in now is the Great Room, and it was the centre of power for the honour of Richmond and gathering place for the most influential people. The rulers of Richmond Castle sat here as they oversaw their vast estate, hearing complaints, settling arguments, giving gifts of land. The decoration of the space would be rich, splendid, featuring colourful tapestries, geometric patterns, mythical beasts and scenes from legend. Pardon me clearing my throat. The stone ledge in front of you represents the remains of a raised platform for a throne. The stone ledge in front of you. So that would be this. Here with the seats on it then. The windows on the east wall are offset to provide the best light for scribes to read and write. The side rooms were probably for storage. Right, so the windows in the east, it's referring to these two up here. So those are at the height they're at, specifically to make it easier to read and write light-wise. And then you've got a little storage room over here, which would have been, they're assuming for storage. This is quite dark down here, and GoPros are notoriously awful in the dark, but you've got a storage area there. Another storage area here. I'm also imagining these may have also been used as possibly bow and arrow points, considering the narrowness of some of the windows, especially like this kind of thing here. And then you've got your other storage room, which if we walk across here is just inside this doorway. There we go. There you go, see? And then you've got some spectacular views from here though, look at that. You can actually see, if we make it out in the video, maybe if I put the camera outside, there we go. They've got a spectacular view of not only the village but the river from here. That's stunning. That's absolutely stunning. Right, so I guess onward and upwards?
Yeah. I saw the stairs, they're very big and very tall.
Right, well now you've got to climb them.
There's too many.
We've still got to climb.
Okay.
Right, so as you look out over the marketplace, you can see the main building here, which is the Chapel of Holy Trinity, which is the main church here in the foreground. You've got one you can just see the tower of, just peeking out from behind the trees. That one there is Francian Friary, or Grey Friars. And then there's another church just off to the side here, you should be able to just make out now as I've turned the camera, which is the parish of St Mary Church. These were all here the same time as the castle. And then this front row here of shops, starting with that white building there on the corner, following that curve all the way along, would have originally been the marketplace area, would have been plots of land occupied by craftsmen, traders, all the way through the medieval times. So it's not really changed that much, it's just modernised and become shops. There is a picture highlighting exactly this view. So what I'll do for you is I'll take a picture of this and then I'll fade in the picture they've got of this with the buildings on top, just to give you a rough idea of how this would have been back when the castle was still very much in its heyday. Right, so as I was pointing out to you before, you can probably see it better now. You can see here, that's the old wall. Now, that old wall, you can see where the hedges are there on the end. There used to be a section of wall that came out across there, and that would have gone straight across the village and connected up at the other side over here. And then the wall would have continued round to meet up with the wall that we just saw on the north side. So this is from a view looking east. What you'll also notice from here is that now you can see all here is houses. Again, here would have been plots of land for growing vegetables and for traders to use to trade their craft. What's quite cool is what you can see from up here you couldn't see from down there is in fact the actual bridge that's being built here that used to once upon a time lead in to the old railway station, which you can see there clearly in the distance. But the views from up here, they're stunning. You can see why they had such a clear look around from quite a distance, so it would have been quite easy to see someone coming. Right, so looking south, there's not as much to tell. There's the river just down here. There's a bridge there now made of stone that crossed the river. Once upon a time that would have been a wooden medieval bridge, and this road here is the road that leads up to Middleham Castle. And Middleham Castle would have been the next castle along, and that guarded further along the dales. That would have been it would looked over the areas of West Witton, Middleham obviously, Ballaby and the kind of surrounding areas there. We'll probably do Middleham Castle at a later date. Erica does have her obsession with castles. But yeah, so that's the view viewing south. So very much not so much what to worry about from this way, because if they're going to get attacked from this direction as a castle, the likelihood is they've probably had to go past Middleham Castle on their way. So they wouldn't have been as concerned about attack from this direction as they would have been from the north over here, which is where the main town was, and from the east on this side here. Right, so it's the final view from the top of the tower. This is a view west. Just behind here, kind of where you can see these skips, that's where the old wall would have been. It would have gone across and then come around this way, met up with the wall that you can see just down here, the remnants of there on the back of the building. Just before it got there, you would have had, once upon a time, an entrance arch and tower, which would have been roughly roundabouts where that green tree is there that you can see. But this would have all been wall. There was no like land or anything here, unlike on the north and east sides for people to grow things. But again, still really good views from around here, and again the land climbs a lot here as well, so again you would have had good views, and they would have had some really good time to kind of assess the situation should any attack have taken place. So that's the top of the tower. We've now got the ruins to do. We've got the rest of the information I gave you downstairs to go through a bit more. But aside from that, we're pretty much done on the tower. But I have to say, I do like the pictures. I hope you find them useful, the way I can fade them in with the current day photographs. But yeah, let's go have a look at what left downstairs, including apparently many toilets. What I'm noticing is obviously this isn't a modern day roof. It's made out of what looks like a combination of steel and lead. But there's a doorway there, bricked in doorway. There's also a bricked in window just here, which makes you wonder if this is the original roof. Also there's edging. You can see this kind of cement edging here going across there and then around the drain pipe. So I'm wondering whether all this, like drain pipes, this roof, were clearly added much later, but I'm wondering if there was originally another roof on here of some description or maybe put in the 1850s when they redid the castle from its original build, and that's when that door was bricked up. But it would be quite interesting to know. Anyway, yeah, downstairs the ruins. As you can see from these areas here, you know, you can see how like this, a lot of like towers, doorways, etc. that you just can't reach anymore. Also, it's a really good example, this section here actually, of the wall, the old wall. You can see how it used to jut out, where you had this wall here, and then what would have been a tower along here with your doorway to, I wonder what's behind that doorway, to somewhere. And then you had a very thick section of wall here, and it is really quite thick. So as we look at that, I suppose it's a good idea at this point to mention about how this used to work. So I mentioned before the original castle was built in the 11th century, which indeed it was, but at that point although castles are very much seen as fortresses, which they always were, this one didn't really work in the same way. So Richmond Castle, very much in its beginning anyway, was much more of almost like an aristocracy estate, as it were. So what you would have is you had the family who owned the castle lived here. They would then have almost like a hierarchy of people living both in the castle and around it, and then the castle will be converted as and when fashions change. The same way now people will change their car or whatever, because that's what the cool thing is to do at the time. And it went on that way for, I think, going into like the 13th century, I believe, and then it kind of fell into disrepair, as did many kind of aristocracy estates of the aristocracy back then, over a period of years. And so what you ended up with then was, well, the entire place being abandoned until the 1850s, when the York militia came along, built the building as it is now, with the stone walls that I've been highlighting to you and stuff from up on top of the tower earlier on in the video, and then made it much more a fortress and less a house. It became much more military at that point, and it was from there they gained much more of kind of like a military background, if you like, because from there on it was very much a case of just one kind of military use after another. So York had it, the York militia had it for a long time, going into the early 20th century. Going into the early 20th century, it was then used by the Territorial Army, the York Division of the Territorial Army, and then its final use from a military standpoint was during the First World War, which obviously ended in 1918. I believe for some time after that it was used by the Territorial Army again, but again it then went into disuse. How it ended up in this state, I'm not so sure, but yeah, so that was its last official use, and then going into the later end of the 20th century it became part of the National Trust, and is now obviously a visitor attraction, just like its neighbouring Midland Castle up the road, both of which are actually ruined, but still have a lot of, well, if you're a child like this lot are, Erica is included in the phrase child, lots of little cubby holes and stuff to explore. So in that retrospect, it's still very useful. Teaches people about history, which is something this channel's obviously been quite big on anyway. But yeah, it's a very interesting place to visit. It doesn't, you know, normally when you visit a castle you expect to climb 20,000 stairs. It does have a fair few, but not that many. It's still got a very pretty garden out back, which we'll have a quick look at if we've got time. But otherwise, it's just a case of walking around the ruins, taking in the spectacular views you get from this castle, and just appreciating the splendour and the effort that went into making it what it was. So anyway, with that in mind, let's have some closer looks at some of these cubby holes varying around the castle, and see where it leads us before the video gets so long it bores you. As you can probably see, this says there are multiple passages like this. I can show you them, there's quite a few, but I don't think you need to see all of them. This would have been a toilet. So in the old days it didn't have toilets in the sense that you have now, so you flushing water. So in a medieval castle your toilet was literally like that. It was a hole in the wall where you sat, you peed, you pooped, whatever, through the hole there, and then that would have been emptied on the other side of the wall by someone else. So someone had the lovely job of going along this wall and then emptying out all those little cubby holes and taking away everybody's poop and pee, which would have landed in a little drawer section at the bottom, and disposing of it, probably I would imagine by chucking it in the river.
But it doesn't melt it.
That doesn't sound like the most glamorous job, does it? That said, it's not too different now from if you go wild camping. You're still pretty much doing the same thing. So I did mention briefly the gardens and stuff. So if we go, hang on, zoom out a bit, there we go. So we go this way past Charlotte, and you'll see that there's there's Blade walking on a wall. But this section splits, so you've got a doorway there that goes through kind of this section of the castle here. You've got a room over here, which I'm not sure what this one was actually. What's this one? Okay, so this would have been the first floor chapel, and you can see this is actually quite an interesting building to look at. So pardon me, you can see here these slots in the walls, and then every now and again you can see there's square sections, holes just underneath those slots. Those would have been where the floorboards would have been for the next floor. So there would have been somewhere in here, there would have been a staircase, and you can see where the window would have been on the next level as well. But so this would have been a chapel at once upon a time. Now, I mentioned to you briefly the garden. So the garden's down there. I'm hoping to take you a look there. It's not a massive garden, but it's very, very pretty. And then you've got, if we go up here, you get quite a nice view of the side of the castle from up this way, so I would like to show you that. So if we climb up here, you can see this has all been freshly paved. What's this? Okay, so this is the Gold Hole Tower, housed the private, okay, so this was the private toilet of the castle, and it was reserved only right, so let's read what this says, because this should be interesting. The Gold Hole toilet was housed
Tower.
Can you shush?
Sorry.
The Gold Hole Tower housed the private toilets, I'm not going to say latrine because no one knows what that means, of the castle owners. Its name comes from the tradition that in treasure was found in its foundations in the 19th century, but there's no evidence of this. So apparently when they built the foundations for this, there's a legend that they found treasure. No one's ever managed to see that. or found evidence of it, but this was apparently just for the owners. This was their own private toilet.
It stinks.
That's
Huge.
massive.
I know.
What? Why would you need such a massive building just to go to the loo? Okay.
Seems dangerous, doesn't it?
It still stinks of when they went to the bog.
I'm not sure it's that bad. Right, anyway, what I wanted to show you from up here, not getting distracted by treasure toilets, is this. So you can see here again all these little slots going along the wall where there would have been a second floor again, and you can see there's also a doorway there which would have been accessible once upon a time. And that whole floor would have covered this, so you wouldn't be able to see this from up here. This would have been, what I'm stood in now, would have been a doorway onto that floor area. And then you've obviously got the lower floor, which goes down into this section, and it's got its own separate door for the other section. I think this is another entrance or another way down into the gardens. And then, this is my favourite view from the castle because we came in the summer, is the view of the river with the bridge. That is by far and away my favourite view of Richmond.
Beautiful.
That is absolutely stunning.
Beautiful.
What you can also see here is, as long as don't suffer from vertigo, is the pathway here that goes alongside the castle. This would have been part of the original side wall that went along this edge of the castle. But yeah, and you can see from here now, that's the road we saw from the top. That's your road off up towards Midland. And then, so this is the gardens. I'm not going to go down into the gardens today. They're not massive. You can see here it's very pretty, very ornate. Someone spends a lot of time shaping these hedges. I especially like the blossom trees. But if you do come here, it's definitely worth a walk around. There are some benches like the one here, or you can sit and have your picnic or your lunch or whatever. It's another good example here as well of the old castle wall just there, if you can see it. There we go, trying to put my finger in the way. But I don't know, looks like is that an apple tree maybe? Looks like it's growing some sort of fruit on it. But let's see, there's a window just over here, I think. It's a much smaller window, mine. Let's have a look. No, you can see here as well though, this has all been recently trimmed. They do keep this garden very, very pristine. It's a wonderful place to be, but if you look at the outside here of the tower, look at the work on that, stonework. That's really impressive. So if you're not familiar with it, which I'm guessing some won't be, the actual building method used for building these castles back, especially in the 11th century. I'm not sure about the building methods in the 18th century, I'll have to look into it. But definitely the 11th century was to basically build almost like scaffolding, if you like, out of wood, and then use that to pull the stone up, and then as you moved your way up the wall, you added on more onto the side until you eventually got to the top. But that's how they used to do that. Building method is quite an interesting one actually. I might do a video actually on building methods of castles. If you're interested in me doing that, let me know. I'll put that in the comments down below. YouTube like all the comments and stuff anyway. While I'm subject to comments actually, I've mentioned in the past couple of videos about 83% I think it was, give or take, of the people who watch my videos at the moment don't subscribe. So if you do like what you're seeing, click the subscribe button. It helps the channel immensely, and I would be very, very grateful. Also, if there is anything you would like to add to the video, information you have, ideas of things you'd like to see on the channel, mention those in the comments down below underneath the video. And Charlotte, when I'll demonstrate for you, it's always very nice to give us a bit of a thumbs up to show you've really enjoyed the video, maybe without the cheesy grin. Right, we'll finish off looking at this castle now anyway. Right, so apologies for the massive shadow of my face, it's the low winter sun. So we're down in a little ditch kind of area at the minute. You can see the castle's there. We're slightly lower than that. So this area here is thought to have all been small buildings. So the castle itself had its own horse-drawn mill, it had its own bakery, it had its own brewery. Over there, that building you can see that has a big massive archway in the wall, that end of that building would have actually been the kitchen. So, and then what you can see there is like a small arch. It's actually a gateway. It's just that it dips down below the level. It's actually on the same level as this. That's where the main traffic came in to deliver the goods to all these service buildings, and the food to the kitchen over here. A good way to tell it's the kitchen, I'll show you in a minute, but all these were kept separate from the east side of the castle, which would have been predominantly all over this side, which would have been all the living quarters. The reason for that is that obviously they have heavy traffic and the owners don't want to be subjected to all the noise and the hustle and bustle of people going in and out the castle quarters, but at the same time they do need food and drink like everyone else. So that's how it was dealt with. So all this all over here was your brewery. There were, like I say, horse-drawn mill, bakery, etc. So there would have been cookers, I'd imagine, there as well. But I also think that here was part of the cooking process too, away from the hustle and bustle. This would have been the main house kitchen area. So I'm guessing this probably would have been storage, but this I would imagine would have been the main kitchen, for two reasons. One, it's reasonably well ventilated. Two, it's about the right size for a 11th century kitchen.
Oh.
And three, it's got a waste hole in it, so that whilst you're in here and you are indeed cooking, well, the cooking was done on the other side in the smaller section, all the waste would have been chucked out through there, and just like with the toilets, the waste would have been collected and then taken away by somebody else on the other side of the wall. And that's very much how the whole service cooking side of the 11th century castles work. They didn't change that much, to be honest, come like the 16th century. So castles in Jersey that we've covered, such as Elizabeth Castle and Gorey Castle, very much functioned in the same way, and that's they were functioning like that five centuries or so after this. So that was very much the way the castles functioned back then. It was kind of the mid 16th century or so where castles became much more of a military thing, less of an aristocracy premises, less of a house, more like an army barracks. That the way that the whole food and prep were dealt with became slightly different due to the nature of the way the castle was being used, changing. Yeah, just thought that'd be interesting for you guys to note. Right, so that's it from Richmond Castle. I'll see you in the second Richmond video, which will be the next one coming up. If everything's gone according to plan, you should be seeing this on a Wednesday, which means that I'll see you in that one on Sunday. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been nice to do a video again after the hiatus, a proper one, out and about. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you soon. Bye.